In The Secret Agent, a man is on the run in 1970s Brazil. He needs to rely on potential allies as he looks to escape the country with his young son. The film might not be exactly what you expect based on the title, but it's certainly got plenty to say. Let's take a look. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Pierna humana achada en barriga de tubarão.
What?
They found a human leg in a shark's belly.
Ah. How much did it take you to sit and memorize the Portuguese there?
What are you talking about? I got Google Translate.
Yeah, but you still have to say it out loud.
I took Spanish classes back in school. It's natural for me.
Okay. All right, that'd take me like half an hour to phonetically just learn the sounds.
I got it.
All right, it's a movie podcast, everyone. We're here. It's 2025 season. We're almost at the end. This is the penultimate episode of the season, and today we're looking at The Secret Agent, which is a Brazilian film, if the talk of Portuguese was not giving that away. I'm sure somewhere else probably speaks Portuguese, but I couldn't tell you where else.
Portugal?
That makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I think I forget Portugal exists.
I mean, I hope that our audience isn't very large there.
I doubt it somehow. I doubt it. Because they're just, they're kind of like, they're just nestled in there in Europe, kind of with all the bigger countries around them.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. Anyway, speaking of things I don't know about, I don't know a whole lot about the history and politics of 1977 Brazil.
What? God, Pete, you're so ignorant.
So that may be something that shows up a little bit as we talk about this movie, but we will start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers, and of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, hit the like button, helps you out a bunch if you do, and you can support us over at Patreon and get some bonus stuff, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, Secret Agent, I don't know how much to say here without spoiling things, but I doubt that if you just hear the title, you would be predicting what the movie actually is. I think you hear The Secret Agent and you're probably thinking it's a spy movie. This is not a spy movie. It's more like kind of like a witness protection program of sorts.
Yeah, it's... I mean, I think that the IMDb, breakdown, a little synopsis here, which is just 1977 Brazil, political turmoil, and a guy is trying to get out of the country, and he's in hiding because of some of that political turmoil. I think that that's a fair enough level of what exactly is going on here.
Yeah, I actually went in completely blind though, so I even know that. I started the movie and didn't know what to expect from it, and then it was kind of slowly being drip fed over the course of the 2 hours and 40 minutes, what it was. You get quite far into it, I think, before you get a good sense of what it's doing and where it's going with what its story is.
Dude, I thought I was an hour into this movie, and I thought I was going to have to message you and be like, Pete, we need to record something else because I don't know what's happening. I have no idea where we're what's going on here. I must have missed something critical. But then, yeah, it slowly drip feeds more things become clear, especially after that halfway point. And it overall, it becomes a full picture, I feel like, by the end.
Which thematically is intentional, actually, which I wouldn't say why because of spoilers, but there's a reason why information is withheld and presented the way it is in the order it is, and why certain things are still missing by the end. It does actually make sense why they've chosen to do that by the end, but it does mean that it's not an entirely conventional story as far as a movie goes. It's definitely doing some stylized things with the way it's telling its story, and not in a flashy way. There's nothing flashy about this movie, more just in some intentional choices have been made to obscure certain things, and it makes sense why they're obscured once you understand the full context.
I agree. However, I will argue there is one specific segment of this movie that is very flashy, and it's insane when it gets there.
There is one scene that sticks out as a what the hell is happening here. But then you get context for it, you're like, okay, I see why they're making it flashy, but it definitely hits you like a like a brick wall when it starts doing something kind of wild. Because I would not describe anything before that point in the movie as wild, right?
No.
Right?
No, it's a very slow burn.
Yeah, it's very reserved, very just kind of confident, doing its thing, and then all of a sudden there's this. And interestingly, I won't say what it is, but apparently based on a real urban legend from the 70s in Brazil. So, yeah, more thoughts on that once we talk about it. Spoilers, but yeah, lots of things going on. But yeah, I mean, this was getting some praise. It was nominated for a bunch of awards. So yeah, so aside from the intimidating runtime of 2 hours and 40 minutes, I was looking forward to checking out and seeing, you know, why it was getting the praise it was. So I guess without further ado, I will just simply ask the question. David, what did you think of The Secret Agent?
It's a tough one for me. Like I said, I really tried to like get into it. I was really giving it my all, but it is a good hour, I think, into this movie before you feel confident that you even have an idea as to what's going on. And I do feel like that is, as you said, intentional. Once we get like the deeper theming and stuff like that, it gets more clear as to why that's being done this way. But it's not an easy watch. In terms of whether or not I liked it, whether it's good, I'd say, yeah, I'm positive. I think it feels like there's someone who... One of the common phrases is you can't break the rules until you know the rules. And this does break a few rules in terms of conventional filmmaking and stuff like that. But it feels like it's done with a purpose. It feels like it is done with somebody who knows what they're doing, who does it with a very specific mindset of what they're trying to get across. And I would say that by the time that we hit the end, I enjoyed the craft of it. But much as you were saying in the beginning, I feel like a deeper resonance is there for people who went through this period of Brazilian history, who have some sort of familiarity with like an established like dictatorship or corrupt like military force and stuff like that. I mean, God only knows where we're going to end up, but I haven't lived through that as much as I would say that we have been in this movie. So it's a very well-made movie. I can respect it on that front, but I do feel like I just don't have the context necessary to give it like the full emotional impact that I'm sure that it hits for other people.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, as we talk about this, there's going to be a lot to discuss and a lot to there's depth here. It's definitely a crafted thing where, like, you know, I've never heard of the director or any of his previous films. This maybe is the one that's kind of maybe reached further outside of Brazil perhaps than any of his other ones. But I think it's well crafted. I think it's well crafted from the very opening scene, right? There's kind of like a subtle tension. And that's a weird phrase to say, but it's a subtle tension. It's not a bomb under the table, but it's like there could be something under the table. We're not really sure if there's something under the table, but there might be something under the table, and you feel a little bit of that pressure. And it's like, okay, that's kind of interesting that we're sort of easing, but we still feel that a little bit, and that goes throughout. So, you know, you said there that you respected the craft, but didn't feel like you emotionally resonated. I think I get that sentiment, and I don't think I'm too far away from it. I think I was appreciating the choices it was making, especially a bit more in the back half. But, you know, it was 2 hours and 40 minutes. That is a long run time to ask of my attention. And ultimately, do I feel like it needed to be quite that long? Probably not. I mean, I don't know what I would have cut out necessarily, but you probably could have trimmed it down a bit here or there and got it down to like 220 or something like that. But regardless, I think it's interesting though, because like you're talking about how, okay, we don't have the context of really knowing this era of history of Brazil. I don't think Brazil came up once when I was in school, right, learning about history. So yes, I know nothing, right? Everything I get in this movie, I get from the context and like the clues that they give me. Like, I get there's oppression here, I get that there's a lot of corruption, I get all those things just from the way that they're acting and talking about stuff, but I don't really understand the context of it or anything more specific. And I think, and this is incredibly unfair, what I'm about to do to any movie, right? It really is. It is wildly unfair. But to bring up Seven Samurai for a second, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm doing this is because Seven Samurai kind of expertly gives you enough in its story and themes where when we reviewed that movie, right, and we did that back when we had the Criterion show and we talked about Seven Samurai, is we were analysing the characters and how they represented different parts of Japanese culture at that time. And while we didn't even know the history of Japan in this time period, we didn't really know for sure if this was actually just what it was like in Japan. Just from the context of the movie, we said, oh no, this represents the new generation and this represents the old generation. And we got the conflict and we got a lot of the nuance despite not having the wider view. This movie feels like it's made more in mind where you can pick up a lot of stuff as you're watching it, but I feel like you probably would get a lot more out of it if you... Like, I feel like for people who grew up in Brazil, and didn't grow up in this time period necessarily, even people who are our age, they probably learned a lot about this time period when they were in school, right? It was probably talked about ad nauseum, right? About, you know, all the different political changes and things like that. At least at a certain point. I mean, maybe it was still a dictatorship and maybe they weren't allowed to talk about it yet, but you know what I mean? At some point...
I mean, from what I'm seeing, it was 64 to 85, and I don't know how firm that was by the time you get to 85. But
interesting. So, you know, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there that it does keep it a little bit of an arm's length where I'm never completely... Like, I appreciate why certain things represent the oppression that's happening without ever, like, dwelling on it. Like, for example, one of the themes that's absolutely in this movie is how people engage in sex and how they look at sex, but it's not something that's ever at the forefront. It's not something that's ever becomes like a major part of what the main character's doing. But it's peppered throughout. There's so many moments where we see, you know, people having sex in a park or people having sex in a cinema or the main characters having casual sex with someone. It's like the subject is constantly being brought up despite not being directly related to like the main plot, if you will. And it's all about just kind of the viewpoints on that and how that feeds into the overall themes and the historical context. And there's other little things like that sprinkled in as well. But that was the one that was really sticking out.
Oh yeah. No, it's interesting to see, like, obviously from an American standpoint, and I would argue even just, you know, this sort of northern western part of the world as well. Going back to the 70s,
you're trying to find a word that like, applies to both me and you. I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, but like not even that. Just the stuff that Hollywood always feels like it focuses more on. Right, you know, that sort of stuff. The vibe of the 70s, it feels like, is very specific. You have a very clear indication of like what the 70s feels like. And that does come through in this movie. Like you're saying, the more liberal view towards sex and stuff like that. That is something that I feel like carries between worldwide. But there is stuff that is so culture specific here as well. Like there's stuff about like how the markets are set up, the different jobs, and of course like the way the role that the police plays in the role in the world here. That is something that feels so culturally still of the time, and yet is still something that can be related to some extent.
Actually, interesting question. They bring up Jaws a bunch in this movie. That's another theme actually throughout, believe it or not, is sharks and the metaphor of sharks. You know, blood in the water, all that. They'll come for you kind of thing. But there's another scene in this movie in the movie theater though where they're watching a horror movie, and I'm curious, David, if you could tell me what that horror movie is.
I know it. I know it. I've watched it. I know I've seen it, which means I'm willing to bet The Omen.
It is The Omen. Okay,
all right. Whew.
Yeah, because see when they showed, you see a little bit of it playing, I was like, oh, I hope they don't mention it. I hope they don't say the name, because I want to test David. I want to test him.
I was down, like, just seeing the scene. It was either going to be Omen or I've never seen Rosemary's Baby, but it strikes me as that sort of thing.
I think it's
Omen is right.
a year too early for that, because it's set in 1977.
Okay.
Now,
gotcha.
By that point, The Omen's a year old, but I mean, this was back in the day when movies would play for, you know, forever, especially in different countries. They would get them later, so that's not surprising. But yeah, so it is funny. It feels like this different era, but then the kid mentions Jaws is out in theaters, and I'm like, oh, that actually puts it in a very specific like timeline. I can understand that, actually. I know movies. 1977, or 75 rather, for that.
Yeah, but I mean, it may also be the sort of thing of like, different release dates around the world. They might have just gotten Jaws.
Yeah, very, very lately. So no, yeah. The rest of the world was on Star Wars. Brazil was just feasted on Jaws.
Yep.
So there you go. But it is interesting though that it's almost like the movie stuff in there was like almost for like foreign people to like latch onto, because we wouldn't have the actual history of Brazil to latch onto. So like no, I recognize these things. I know these things from 1975 through 7.
Yeah. As soon as they play some other, and I think there was a shot somewhere in there where they were advertising, I'm assuming, the 70s King Kong.
Yes. Yes, which is again, around this time. I've never actually seen that one as of yet, but
have it eventually.
It'll be on the Ace at some point. I've almost put it on there a couple times, so
oh boy,
we'll get to it. But
we'll do it for the next Kong Godzilla.
Oh sure. So. Yeah, I mean, as far as like performances are very good. Direction is also very confident. It's very reserved. It's not flashy, but always feels like it's making intentional choices. So it's a very skilled set of hands behind the camera. I think it's fair to say. And you've got the lead actor here. So let me just grab his name so I'm referring to him properly. Wagner Moura, if I'm saying that correctly, because who knows how he pronounces it, but
seems right.
He plays the main character of Armando / Marcelo, because he has like an alias throughout the movie, but Armando's his real name. And I think he does a good job of carrying a lot of like history in this character before we ever learn any of it. Like, as soon as he like starts getting to locations early on in the movie, you can sort of tell there's like a lot going on like in the background of the story that we've not seen yet. But he sells this idea of like the weight that he's carrying. So it's like, okay, like they're that, if anything, that was one of the things that was comforting. That was like, okay, I can tell that they're going to reveal more later because they're kind of hinting at more has already happened. And and I was guessing a few different things in that first like 40 minutes or so, where it was like, oh, is he going to be more like, is he a secret agent? Is he here to do something bad? And that's what we're going to be learning about later or something. But, honestly, there was a time early on in this movie when I thought we were jumping around timelines a little bit. And they weren't, but I thought they were.
To an extent, they kind of are.
Well, no. I know what you're talking about. I'm not talking about that. That's very separate.
That's separate, right?
But I was thinking, really, oh, here's a scene from 1976. Here's a scene from 1977. We're going to jump back 2 years prior, and I thought we were bouncing around, maybe for a little bit.
I didn't catch each of them. I think I missed part 2, but they come up with little like title headers every once in a while of like different parts.
That's when I thought we went back. I thought when chapter 2 started, we went back to before the start of the first chapter. We didn't, but I thought we did for a second.
And we get a little prelude beforehand, which is just at a gas station, which does a fantastic job of setting up the sequence. But when part 1 rolls around, it's called A Boy's Nightmare, and the first characters we see are completely different characters that we've never met before. I'm like, oh, this main character's like childhood. Like, we're going back to when he was a boy. This is his nightmare. Nope. Just some totally separate thing. No.
Turns out to be the main character's son, who's the boy who's having the nightmare. And it's
Jaws. It's always Jaws.
Yep, it's the Sharkies. So, I think the structure of the movie is perfectly fine, and it does do some interesting things as it goes further on. Do I think it could have been tightened up a little bit? Sure. Like I said, 2 hours and 40 is a long time, and it definitely takes its time at points. Like we said, it takes like a good, I think you're like at least half an hour into the movie before you start to, because we spend like a good 15 minutes in that opening prologue scene, and it's a good opening prologue scene. But it does mean that it contributes to the fact that it's like 40 minutes before we start even hinting at why he's going where he's going, why he's here, and all that stuff.
For me, I think my biggest critique, not even a critique, but just where it could be tightened up, is the introduction of everyone else. Like, there is a secondary cast here that we spend a lot of time getting to see these like bonding friendships and like everything that they're going through. And I understand from the purpose of the movie, it's supposed to show this thing, how it is affecting everybody, how the world at large and how everyone here is kind of stuck in the same sort of boat, all doing their own thing, but they've all landed in this similar situation. But I think you could have done that with like one character. I don't think we needed to go through each and every one of these people and spending so much time developing all of that. I think it could have easily been done with just, see, it's also affecting this other person. You can elaborate and extrapolate from there that it's more on top of that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, as far as anything else goes, like I don't. I obviously most of what I want to talk about is deconstructing the story, which I can't really do until spoilers. So, I mean, as far as anything else goes, I will say the music's also very reserved. It didn't really stick out to me too much. Felt appropriate when it did come in, but it wasn't. You know, it's a movie that goes a long time without score. It plays a lot silently.
Yeah, it opens the movie up with like a radio station playing and some licensed music and stuff like that. And I thought that was what we were going to get throughout the movie, but it's pretty null up until, like you said, the moments where the score comes in every once in a while.
Yeah, it's very contextual. At one point he walks through, there's a celebration happening that goes on, Carnival is like the season they're in, so there's like a parade in the street, and he walks through that at one point. It's like, okay, so there's contextual music where appropriate, but it's not something where it's needle dropping tracks of any kind at any other point in the movie. So yeah, honestly, yeah, I think we probably have to go into spoilers to start really talking about it in any great length. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we get into the spoilers?
No, I know you always get on me for suggesting like people like the kind of mood you should go in when watching a movie and whatnot, but this one, like I said, it was tough to get to the point where I felt comfortable with it. I think it's still good. I think it's still worth a watch, but it does take some commitment to sit down and really get there.
Yeah, that's fine. I only give you shit when it feels like you're explaining to someone. Like, I feel like the sort of person who's listening to a movie podcast like this is already at least a little bit like in the door, so you don't have to like speak to them like they're your grandmother.
You never know what episode's going to be the one that hits the algorithm. All of a sudden we're getting millions of views.
Keep up is what I say. That's part of the fun. Right? When you get into comic books, you have to discover what number of Detective Comics you're on. You just accept it. You have to. That's part of the process of getting involved.
Nope, I go back to number 1. That's always how I do it.
Oh, you went back to the Golden Age and started reading from there? Is that what you did?
Yep, exactly. It's very boring up until 27.
That was a really nerdy DC Comics joke that no one but me got, I don't think, there. But
keep up.
Issue 27's Batman's first appearance. Okay. All right. So spoilers for The Secret Agent from this point on. You have been warned. All right. Well, let's talk about the framing device, right? And it's something that... Because it's a while before you get this. Like, we are a good... at least 45, maybe an hour into this movie before the first, like, sort of, like, cut. Because it does this thing where it cuts to, the cassette playing, and I'm like... oh, we're somewhere else and someone's listening to these tapes. I didn't think it was like a big time jump. But then in the background, I noticed like flat screen monitors and computers, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I think the initial shot is like they pause, and then there's a focal shift, and then you see an iPhone, and like your brain takes a second of like, there was no iPhone in 77.
Well, even I was thinking like, oh, this tape deck looks maybe like, did they have like these types of tape decks in 77? And maybe they did, but like, but as soon as I had that thought, I noticed computers in the background and went, oh, never mind.
Yeah,
never mind. Clearly, we have moved on to this is people listening to the tapes, and if not exactly present day, somewhere in the vicinity of present day.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to give extra context on that, the fact that our main character is in hiding and is doing whatever, the whole hiding is being helped by a resistance group led by a woman named Elza. And the tapes are her basically getting evidence from people of the corruption of the government, the people who are doing whatever. So the framing device is people who have found these tapes long after the fact and are now kind of documenting and going through them. It's
not even found per se. It's like the daughter or granddaughter of Elza who just handed them over to this university, and that's why they're going through them all. So yeah, like basically the way they describe it when we get to that scene where they finally sit down and talk and record one of these conversations, They compare it to witness protection, right? You know, in the US it's witness protection, but that's something that the authorities do to protect someone who's going to testify. In Brazil, it's something the resistance are doing to protect them from Brazil.
Right.
And that's the end of the comparison that's made. But yeah, like there's people listening to these tapes, and we focus mainly on this one researcher named Flavia, who's listening to these, and every so often we'll come back and we'll see her listen to a little bit and rewind and listen to it again and that kind of thing. This is, and I wanted to get to this first because it kind of like shapes how and why we learn information the way we do, and it's not necessarily apparent even when this is introduced. It's not until really towards the end that it kind of became clear why some parts of the story are kind of disjointed. The idea is that everything we see in this movie is something that there was some kind of record of, because the main character of Armando, either it was recorded in the tapes, and that's obviously what she's listening to most of the time, or all the other scenes are where he was talking to someone else, whether it was someone in the records office where he had like a fake job, whether it was the people he was living with in this refuge kind of like house with these other people who were hiding, whether it was, you know, the father-in-law that he goes to see, that all these characters. There's like someone else to witness what he said or did in almost every scene, once past the prologue. But even in the prologue, the gas station guy and like, you know, whoever, I suppose. But, you know, It's all like there's like maybe someone to kind of like fill in some of those blanks in theory to build a story. And it's why when we get to the end and he's like, okay, I need to get out of here, there's an assassin coming and like it's not safe here anymore. And then we just cut to present day and it's like we don't get an ending until the researcher Flavia is looking like through more newspaper like history stuff and finds the article and the photograph of his death. It's like, no, he was killed. He was assassinated probably that day, and he was framed as being, you know, a corrupt professor who was doing shady stuff. It was all a cover-up story. And it's meant to be this idea of like, if you're researching in the present, you only get whatever was actually like, you know, preserved or whatever was told. And the only thing about the
official story.
We get the official story, but all the other stuff is there though. But it just suddenly stops at that point because that's it. No one else. He didn't speak to anyone else after that moment where he said, you know, I need my passports. I'm leaving this town or whatever. And then that's it. Next time we see him, it's the photograph in the newspaper in the present day where he's dead. So it's a very stark way. It's very bold to just like kill off your main character off camera like that. There's one famous example I can think of, which I won't say because it's a huge spoiler for the movie, but it definitely reminded me of that a little bit. But obviously, it's going.
Okay.
I was going to say it's going for this idea, of course, that these things were covered up, and the powers that be, the dictatorship in charge at the time. Obviously, they have just covered these things up, and it's actually really tough now in hindsight to find a record. And it feeds into this idea that the main character in the movie, Armando, at the records office wants to try and find like proof of who his mother was because he doesn't have anything to prove that she existed even. But he knows that her ID card was given out from this office, so he's looking for it. And that kind of feeds into this idea that in present day, his son, now grown up, played by the same actor, basically doesn't know anything about his father because his history has also been erased. And maybe this researcher handing over the research that she's compiled in all these recordings might finally let him have a chance to know who he was. But it's this idea that kids, both the main character and his son, have grown up in a world where they barely knew one of their parents because they were already gone, and everything was hush-hush from that point on. Yeah, no,
I mean, it's even... what I was going to say earlier was that when we get to the end of the movie and we get that essentially anticlimax, we get just this thing of like, we build and build, we have all this assassin stuff and all this hitman stuff, and then just all of a sudden, oh, nope, he didn't make it. And then the movie continues on for maybe like 10 minutes after that. It's a blow. It hits you deep, and it's something that that's what I was saying earlier with the knowledge of when to break the rules. It's that sort of thing of, I don't foresee this working all the time, but because of everything else that we've been setting up theme-wise of the framing device and the official stories and stuff like that, and also how like nothing in this guy's life has like worked out well. Like, it's a thing where because of the historical thriller, because it is set during this period, this isn't a thing where it's like, and he managed to escape and everything's fine, and like Brazil is now fine or whatever like that. It's like, no, we're still dealing with the history of what came out of this. Like, it's made its impact, and we are still trying to deal with how that all happened.
Yeah, it's the idea that I mean, if anything, this is because I don't think this is based on a real person, but I think just the general idea is based on like what a lot of people probably did go through. This idea of not knowing who your parent was because their existence was lied about or erased or whatever the case may be.
They just disappeared.
Yeah, so that's kind of what this is exploring, and it does things throughout to set up this idea of like the cover story and covering up the real story, and that's where we bring in the leg. We have to talk about the leg. There's a subplot in this movie about so early on, the introduction to the corrupt like police chief and his two kind of sons that he has as like deputies, whatever.
I think they're actual sons. I don't think that was like a term of endearment. I think they're actually his sons.
There was a couple of lines that made it sound like it was like by choice rather than actually related by blood. But I mean, it doesn't really matter either way. They're his cronies. And honestly, their introduction, I thought they were just gangsters. Like the way they roll up and they're all in civvies. It wasn't until they go into the room with like the scientist or the whoever, where I'm like, oh no, they're police. Like this is them going to like the like a coroner style scene.
Yeah, but I feel like that obviously is intentional because they are very corrupt police. Like they are gangsters and everything except for name.
Absolutely. That's you're right. It's not an accident. But they're there because a shark washed up on shore, and inside that shark there is a full-size human leg that has been bit off. And it's like, okay. Early on, I was thinking, all right, my assumption is like this is like someone that was dumped in the water and covered up by the state, like they were eaten by a shark, and this leg is evidence, and that's why. Because in the middle of the movie, the two like sons go to the morgue and like steal the leg. They pay off the coroner, and they dump the leg in the water and replace it with like a goat's leg or whatever. And I'm like, why are they doing this? And my only assumption was that because this leg is evidence, they don't want to be found for some reason.
Yeah, there's a bit somewhere in the middle of them looking at the newspaper and like the leg is on the front page or whatever. Yeah. And then when they open up the newspaper, there's a story of a student or something that has gone missing. And I think it's the cops who are reading that, and they're like pointing to his leg while they're saying like, oh, if only we had known how much trouble this would be. I think it's supposed to be that this is the kid who disappeared and like that's his leg. Yeah,
okay. So it's like, all right, they're covering that up. We get that. And it's brought up a lot throughout the movie. People keep saying, oh, you read in the paper, there was a leg, the main character's son's like, oh, I want to see Jaws. Did you hear about there was a shark with a leg in it? And the father-in-law's like, oh, we're playing Jaws again because everyone wants to watch it now because this shark story about the leg. So it keeps coming up, this idea that it's like, it's permeated like throughout the land. Everyone's talking about this leg and the shark. And it leads, after they've dumped the leg in the water, we go to other scenes for a bit, it leads to this insane sequence where we cut to the leg and it's like washed ashore of the river and it's just sitting there. And if you notice, it's like, I don't know if you noticed this before it went ahead, but you can see it starting to like, sort of almost as if it's breathing, it starts twitching.
Yeah, its toes flex for a second. You're like, and it cuts away like as soon as it happens.
And I'm like, wait, what are we doing? This has been a very, very straight, grounded, like slow burn movie. Why is there now a leg? And then it attacks basically a bunch of doggers. That's a very UK word I'm using there, but people having sex in a public space with strangers.
Yes.
Right? Including, notably here, a lot of gay characters having sex, but some straight characters as well, and then some homeless people lying around. Notably, I think all people that I don't imagine are treated very well by this regime, I would assume.
No, absolutely not. And like, again, I was waiting for it to do a zoom out because we've already gotten the cinema setting in this. We already have seen them like watching The Omen. I was waiting for a zoom out and it being like, haha, that hairy leg thing has been turned into a movie. And it's like, all this like Brazilian in joke sort of thing, and like the system was moving quick on making a profit off that. But instead we find out that this is actually just a news reported story where people were saying, people were attacked in the park, and like you said, it's homosexuals, it's homeless people, it's people who this is a cover story to explain why they were beaten up senselessly, but it also is completely ridiculous and insane.
Yeah, or killed, honestly, is what I was
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, because so it looks like a stop motion leg, like hopping around, and it just sort of jumps and kicks people in the face, and their face is all bloody. But yeah, you're right. It's all just a cover story for police brutality, basically. And they can tell, you know, the woman who's reading it, who's one of the people who's hiding at the same place that Armando is like they all know this is like the writers, the journalists are clearly writing something that we all know is fake, but we're clearly saying we all know what they mean. We all know what they're talking about.
We all know, well, at least we all know what it is, but nobody's going to say it.
Yes.
Like in a public setting, no one's going to call it out as this is clearly a lie.
So it's like, okay, but that sets up this idea of the cover story, and that's the thing that permeates. And obviously this one's quite funny because it's inherently stupid. And wildly, this one is based on something that really happened. There was an urban legend of a hairy leg in parts of Brazil in the 70s.
Sure.
I love that we have the Loch Ness Monster and Brazil has the hairy leg.
I mean, I'd assume that they might have some other ones as well, but no, this is...
Hairy leg, that's all I've got. I've decided.
The Perna Cabeluda. Oh, wow, that's a lot hairier than was in the movie.
Oh?
Jeez, it's like a Sasquatch leg jumping around.
They've got a Sasquatch leg. You've got a Sasquatch.
Here we go. It was conceived by a newspaper during the military dictatorship in the 1970s. The newspaper used fictional narratives about the leg to replace and signal material that was censored by the regime. So, yeah, it is essentially just that little canary in the coal mine being like, if you see anything about a hairy leg, wink, wink.
I mean, to be fair, though, at least we know why this myth started. This was an intentional creation that we understand the context of. No one knows why the Loch Ness Monster or the Sasquatch started.
Yeah, probably drugs. I'd imagine hairy leg as well.
So, yeah, I mean, like, it's a wild sequence, though. You're sitting there going, wait, why is this movie doing weird stuff all of a sudden? But then you get the context, you're like, okay, it's doing a very stylized scene to show how ridiculous this story in the newspaper is. And then, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And it's almost like a counterpoint. Obviously, we're an hour and 45 minutes into the movie at that point, but it's almost like a counterpoint to the initial scene where, I mean, just to briefly go over it, he pulls into a gas station, there's a brief talk or whatever, and the whole time there's this dead body just under a piece of cardboard, maybe like 50 feet away. And the guy who's running the gas station is like, yeah, he tried to like steal, he brought in a gun to the place, my coworker shot him, and the cops said they'd be out in like 2 days or so. It's been a week and they just haven't shown up. And it's that sort of blandness, that sort of like, everyone just accepts that this horrific way is the way that things are under this regime, and how the cops are completely corrupt and are not bothering to do their jobs anymore.
Yeah, and then two policemen show up, but they don't show up for this dead body. They're surprised to see it. They're here because they noticed the car that Armando's in and want to just shake him down. They're like, hey, do you have anything? Oh, well, everything seems to check out. Would you like to make a donation for the policeman's ball? That's basically what he says.
And he knows it. He knows, like, if I don't give you anything, I'm going to be arrested. So I don't have money. Here's my last cigarettes. I hope it's enough.
Yeah. And obviously there's this sort of like, and this is the thing at this point in the movie, right at the start, I'm like, oh, is he a secret agent? Does he have a gun stash somewhere? Like, is this a thing we're doing? But no, that's not that at all. And he goes and visits his son to establish that his son's there. But he's given this place to live, right? And we find out later from Elsa that this is something that Elsa's set up. This is a place where 4 or 5 of the people living here are also in hiding, like him, for one reason or another. There's also a cat or 2 cats that are conjoined.
Oh my god! I completely forgot about the Siamese cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one cat as far as I could tell, but it has 2 faces, and it shows up, and I'm like, oh wow, that's some really bold symbolism for whatever it is we're going to be doing with that later on. And I don't think the cat ever shows up again.
You see it a little bit during one sequence of them all talking to each other later, But
all right, fair enough.
But not a bunch. Honestly, all these characters, because they set up like this like couple that live here, and I thought we were going to see a bunch of them. And honestly, the scene where they're reading the newspaper later is the only time we see them again.
Yeah. No, this movie does a lot of setting up these secondary characters. Udo Kier is in this movie as
Hans.
As we find out, he is a Holocaust survivor, but everyone just kind of assumes that he's a Nazi fugitive, and like everyone who knows the truth is like, why don't you just clear it up? Why don't you just tell them? And he's like, it's not going to matter. Like, they're just shaking us down. I'll let them believe whatever they want to believe.
Yeah, he comes a bit later though. Yeah, because we set up the couple. We set up this woman who's got a son who is a dentist. And it's funny because like it cuts to a scene like this. There's like a bit of a flirtatious look when they first see each other, and it cuts to a scene later where she's like, I was like, oh, he's at the dentist because he's getting his mouth checked. He's got a little mirror and she's like looking for cavities or whatever. And then like just halfway through like the scene, I noticed, wait, is she wearing a top? And then you realize that this is like something she's doing lying on top of him after they've had sex, and I'm like, this is like. I don't know if I've ever seen sexual tension when someone's checking someone's teeth for cavities.
Look, maybe I'm kink shaming here. I'm okay with that. If I am ever in a situation where sexy times is on the table and dental tools come out, I'm calling it quits. I'm packing up.
It's more like he was getting a free dental exam after. It's like he paid for it first with sex, and then he got and then he got checked out.
Yeah, why not? And he doesn't even have any cavities. So that's nice.
Oh yes, he's taking really good taking good care of his teeth. I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, so I mean, we see him like lying next to her later on when he has a nightmare. So like I do appreciate that it establishes there's like a little sense of community in the old woman who like sort of runs this house and is nice to everyone. Yeah. It sets up this that they all look out for each other. There's a nice sense of family, even though we don't see a whole bunch of them. So I guess I have to applaud it for getting that across, even though we don't come back to them that much throughout the movie.
I mean, yes and no, because that's also like, while I appreciate that we get that across, it also feels like the least needed thing. And it's what pads out so much of this opening bit. Like, I think if you had told me like, yes, all of these people are here or whatever, like the idea that you were saying of we get introduced this couple and you expected the couple to come up more, I think is the movie almost failing to deliver on a promise a little bit. Like I can't tell whether or not it's intentional, but for me it felt like, no, all of these people we're meeting are going to get some level of fleshing out, and we get a little bit from that one woman, but everyone else, it's like, no, this is just to show that Elsa has built up this network. That's all it is.
To counterpoint that slightly, is that because they don't have tapes for these people, so we're only getting to see what other characters have said about them, kind of thing?
Fair, but like I get wanting to do this historical research, and if you're framing it through that lens of this person doing historical research, they came across these people being mentioned but don't have anything else on them, you just like still cut the character. Like I understand it from a framing perspective. Yeah,
I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I am simply trying to explain their thought process and like why the decisions that were made.
I mean, fair enough. I did not consider going into this review, like even after watching the movie, that all of it was from the framing device of like people who were talked to or anything like that. I felt like a decent amount of it was, a fair amount like regarding Elsa, and like especially once the assassination attacks and stuff like that were moving forward. But I felt like the early stuff specifically was very much of, we're just throwing in other stuff here. Like the bit where he's at the gas station. Like, who would he have talked to? Who would anybody have talked to make that happen? That's
the one bit, and that's the prologue before it starts. But I think everything after that, though, there's always at least another character that he's interacting with in some way. Like, so he goes to the fake job, right, at the records office, and he's, like, interacting with the guy that works there, also the woman that kind of flirts with him a little bit and knows what he's doing, and she's there in a couple of later scenes as well. There's like a contact that he has, which admittedly when I thought it was still a secret agent movie, I thought it was just he's like handler or something at first, but it's not, obviously. But he contacts this guy, and they have a couple of secret phone calls, and there's a whole thing of like, oh, does this guy have a leak in his office that could lead to him, and he's calling him from a payphone and all that. Like, And we don't see a whole lot of that character, right? Well, after the phone call scene, he kind of disappears from the movie, but I was kind of, in hindsight, I was looking back at these, like, all these characters who pop in for just a couple of scenes, and I'm like, oh, I can see how, someone interviews these people and gets these little fragments of the story, and they all fit together kind of in the package we get in the movie, but by the end.
Yeah, I mean, it makes, I can see it happening. It makes sense from that level of going in depth and all that sort of stuff. I guess for me, by the time we hit the end, it felt like the historical framing of like someone doing research only really extended between tapes and newspapers. I didn't feel like there was anything where they went out and spoke to people independently.
I mean, I think that's getting a little... Because I think you're taking what I'm saying very literal. I'm saying it's like a thematic through line, not necessarily a literal, like the characters actually did this.
No, that's fair.
So I think... So to get into the backstory of it, though, because obviously once we actually get to like meet the father-in-law properly, because we see him actually earlier on when the kid's first introduced, but we see him at his work at the movie theater, and they're watching The Omen and stuff like that. There's an interesting little exchange that I think is quite good, where we learn more about the wife that died. Is that the father-in-law says, hey, I want to look you in the eye and ask you something, right? And he's like, okay, sure. He's like, hey, when you were married to my daughter when she was alive, did you cheat on her? And he's like, well, why are you asking me this? You know we loved each other. He's like, no, but I'm asking, did you cheat on her? And they get interrupted before he can answer. And the funny thing is that because by this point we've already had the scene where he's had sex with the dentist lady, and it was so casual, it puts just a little bit of a stink on this, where you're like, it feels like he might have done. We're not really sure. We never know. We never find out. But there's just enough like seeds of doubt.
Yeah.
And why is he? Because why is he asking that if there's not a reason to like suspect something?
Right. Pretty much everything with the wife character is shrouded with a layer of probably. Like we get some things that definitely happened, very few things, but everything else is just kind of this is probably what happened.
Yeah, because even like he says to the kid, "Oh, mom got sick and died," but honestly, by later on in the movie, I'm like, did she get sick and die, or was she killed by the the establishment?
All right. So I mean, just to give the overarching of like why he's in hiding. That comes from the scene from Elsa where he's like explaining the backstory and talks about. So this villain, we'll call him, right? The villain was introduced previously in a scene where he hires these two hitmen who were also introduced in their own scene, dumping a body, right? So this is how you get up to 2 hours and 40 minutes. You give all these like scenes introducing every character. So we get these two hitmen. One's like an older guy, one's a younger guy. Turns out they're stepfather and stepson, apparently. But they meet with this guy who hires them to track someone down and kill them, and they debate price a little bit and all that, but you see the photograph eventually and you're like, oh, it's our man, this is him. And it's like, okay, so that sets up that they're on their way to come and get them. And in fact, in this scene with Elsa where he's explaining the backstory, by the end of that she's like, hey, we've heard that 2 people have been sent to find you. So he gets that threat like said to him. And during everything up until the conversation with Elsa, we've said it before, but like there's this implication, there's this non-answer of, is this guy actually a secret agent? So when he has this hit put out on him, like the guy putting out the hit does not say, for the audience's sake, what it is for. It's not saying what happened. He's just saying, this is the guy I want dead. You got to take care of him. It's all said with this level of like, oh, he's knows too much. He's got the secrets.
It definitely also had a bit of a stink of disdain. Like he clearly personally doesn't like him. I also got that from the way he was asking for the assassination. As we find out is true as well. So it's like, okay, all right. So let's find out what happened then. So it turns out, this is the first we hear of this, is that Armando is an engineer, a researcher, a scientist, if you will. And he was working in a lab developing technology and doing a bunch of stuff, including electric vehicles, which I imagine was in its infancy in 1977. Yes. But doing stuff and all that. And the villain kind of comes to visit because he's part of the establishment. He's like a rich guy. And he effectively comes into this place, looks at all their technology and says, oh, you guys are too independent and you're getting funding from public and are kind of like operating without any oversight. I'm going to make this my thing and roll it into everything and split you all up. We don't like this idea of you poor people in the South being able to do this type of research. This is going to go to the North where all of us like corrupt people live kind of thing.
Yeah. I had to look it up. They say that he is a former Eletrobras a director or whatever, executive. And Eletrobras is basically Brazil's like major electric company.
Okay.
Like, of course, they would have a capitalist stakeholder in that.
But I mean, even though I didn't get like the full context of like who he was or like what any of this stuff was going on was, the what was very clear is that this was someone coming in and saying, no, like, you're independent and we are the machine. We are going to take that for ourselves. You're not allowed to operate like this, and to hell with all of what you want to do. Like, this was clearly like, you know, the rich 1% are coming down and being like, no, you don't get to have this freedom. No.
Yeah. Well, I think it's Marcelo, the main character, is given, like, he discovers something and
Armando,
he puts patents
please,
on it.
right? Let's be consistent.
All right, fine, Armando. He has some patents on whatever technology he has. And so the idea of it is basically like, look, you guys are working with public funding, like you are, as you said, independent. If those patents are used for the public good, we're going to lose a lot of money. So it is just greed. Like top to bottom, it is just like, screw you. We're going to take that patents. We're going to privatize it. And we're going to make it so that not everyone can benefit.
Oh yeah. It's all power and greed. It all comes back to those two things. That's all this is about. But he goes into talking about this dinner where before the meeting happened, where the guy said all this stuff. He took him out for dinner with his wife. So that was the thing I was thinking as these scenes were playing out at first, in these flashbacks. I was like, was his wife still alive during these scenes? Because it was only a few years ago. It was 1974. And she's at this dinner. And this villain kind of belittles her a little bit by saying, oh, are you a secretary or something like that? Kind of, you know, just assumes something to that effect. And she's so disgusted, she has to get up and leave the table, and like the guy sort of debating in her absence, and you know, her husband, you know, Armando sticks up for her and says, you know, you're disrespecting her, and so on and so on. And later on, we see when she sort of stands up to him, he turns to Armando and says, control your woman. So you get a sense of who this asshole is, like throughout the entire scene. But so other than the fact that he disbands all these people and sends them all to different projects in different parts of the country, so that this place can't function anymore. It notably does not get to like a clear, because it felt like we build it up to like the big thing that he does that makes Armando go on the run, and it never actually does that. It never gives you, this is the big thing that happened and then I did something. Like he punches him at the end of this flashback at the dinner scene because things get heated. The bad guy's son starts to like get handsy and he throws a punch, but you don't get the vibe that's like the only incident, right? It feels like there's some more to it that we are not getting here.
Yeah, and like it basically earlier on in the thing, the father told the son, Armando said to his son, your mom died of pneumonia. And there's like just kind of this sinking implication of like, did she? Is that, because that's still during the portion where it's like, you're saying it a lot, which makes it sound less true every time you reiterate it.
Yeah, and the one moment that teases this is that there's a nightmare sequence where you just get a couple of quick flashes where he's lying next to his wife, with the same hair and beard that he had in the flashbacks, and like the dream might be like making it a bit weird, like someone's like in like a furry like thing.
Yeah, it's a visual that we got earlier on just during the prologue.
Yeah, it was. I think it's like maybe someone in like the celebrations was wearing some.
It's something to do with the carnival, but I could not tell you what it's supposed to represent.
But it's like someone sneaking up to the house, and then he wakes up, and as if it's a nightmare, and it's like, oh, did someone come to the house and try and kill them, and they got her, but not him, and like him and the son got away, and he's been on the run since, kind of thing. Or
it could have just been like sending a message because she was the one who was a little bit more vitriolic. She was the one who was a little bit more up against the guy and calling him names. Yeah, she basically got in his face and said, no, like, my husband's a man, you're not. My father, who's been working since he was 9, he is a man, you're not. And he did not seem to take kindly to all these critiques. Nope. And that's as we're getting cut in between him recording the tapes and then the future people listening to the tapes after the fact. This is all just kind of like, okay, things are coming together. We have not a full picture, but we have a better picture of this guy's just a guy. He's not a secret agent. He's just trying to get out of the country alive. And more specifically, he wants to be able to bring his son along with him.
Yeah, and it's an interesting little moment, actually, where he stops the recording. He leans over and stops to say something. And then when they put the recording back on, Elsa, the woman who's sort of doing the interview, says, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. And she stops it again. And it's almost as if to cover the tracks in the future. It'll sound like it only stopped because she had to go to the bathroom and not because like someone was trying to cover something up or anything like that.
Yeah, because he pauses it to specifically say, like, I would cause physical harm upon this man. I would absolutely do that. That is 100%. She's like, that's not really what we want.
Yeah, to be specific, he says that he would bash his head in with a hammer, and someone says, why don't you get a gun? And he says, I don't know how to use a gun. I know how to use a hammer. Which I actually thought was a darkly funny line, to be honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then he like restarts the recording on his own, and that's when she's like, we need to fix that a little bit.
Yep. But this is where we start to get like a bit more of the future stuff, and then like, they pause the tapes, and it's like, okay, so they're getting bits and pieces of this and whatnot, and so. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's that much plot to actually go through, funnily enough. Like, ultimately, the two assassins get into town. We get a whole extended segment where they actually know the corrupt, like, chief of police here, and they kind of, like, get pally with him. But ultimately, the two assassins go to a local guy and hire him to kill him, which I was like, are you supposed to be the assassins? But okay, you're passing this off, which I guess is more commentary, because it is kind of fitting in a weird way that the older assassin is literally on a beach, like under like a shower, just enjoying the beach life.
Yeah.
When all this is playing out, and then we never see him again after that. And I'm like, so you just wanted to be like the upper management. You just wanted to like, put the things in motion, but not actually have to get your hands dirty and just reap the rewards.
Yeah, because they spend a lot of time determining the price of things. And if I remember correctly, they were like, I think it was $6,000 for the initial job to like kill Armando, but then when they pass it off to the other guy, it's $4,000 for him. So they just walk away with $2,000 and like don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Although the younger guy still sort of stays involved, as we see throughout the last.
And that's the entire last segment is playing off this idea that the police have set up shop in the ID shop where Armando is. They don't know that he's on the run or anything like that, so they're a little bit buddy with him.
Yeah, the chief of police actually is taking a liking to him when he first met him earlier on, which is something that Armando doesn't really like very much, obviously, because he's not an asshole. But that sets up something interesting that happens, though, because the two assassins hire this guy who works at a local factory to do the job, and kind of belittle him a little bit and say, oh, you're just a peasant, you're like an animal, you'll do it for 2,000. He's like, no, 4,000. He's like, okay, fine, 4,000. He's the assassin that's actually going to come and try and kill Armando. And this leads to a couple of really cool sequences where he's coming into the records office and he kind of sees him and he's like, hey, is that Armando? And then the woman's like, no, his name is Marcelo. What are you talking about? And he just shouts out Armando to see if he reacts, and Armando like has to like he does pause a little bit. He pauses a little bit, and he's like, no, I need to just no sell this. I just need to walk on like I'm not paying attention to it. But Armando's tactic then is to go to the chief of police and say, hey, you know how we're friends now? This guy came down to the office and started harassing the girls and me and like threatened us. Can you go and take care of him? So there's kind of like a weird irony here that he somehow turned like friends of the assassins onto their hired assassin. And this hired like local assassin, this worker, when he's approached by like one of the chief's sons and this other cop that he's brought with him, he just like very quickly opens fire. And this movie has not had action sequences, but all of a sudden these gunshots are so violent and they're so visceral, with the skin like hanging off the cheek and the blood spatter and all that, and like they pop it off an extra shot as he goes down, even though he's clearly dying from a gunshot to the face.
look, like we get the standard fare of like the guy gets shot in the leg and you just see like a red hole in his pants and like, you know, some bloody footprints or whatever. That's to be expected. But when these two cops die, Jesus, it is brutal. It is gory as hell, and they do not shy away from showing any of it.
Yeah, and we get like a sort of chase sequence that comes here because like the guy like hobbles off. He's got leg hurt, but he just shot two cops in the face, so he's hobbling away. And the younger assassin hears these gunshots and like sort of realizes that things have went tits up. And he goes sort of looking for him throughout the streets of the city. And there's a kind of an extended chase sequence of him trying to find him. And again, we don't actually kind of really like get all the context here, but ultimately he catches up to him going through a barber shop, and the hired assassin shoots him and says, "Oh yeah, I'm like an animal." It's almost like doing it out of spite. And because we don't actually see how Armando dies, we know that he's obviously scared. He knows that there's an assassin nearby. He's getting ready to run away. The most likely assumption is that this hired assassin did circle back round and like fire off, you know, the shots that killed him. It could be someone else, but he's the most likely candidate, you would assume.
Yeah. But like we see the researchers in the future, they pull up a newspaper of the one assassin guy who was killed in the barbershop. He's down on the ground. And then as soon as he says like, I need the passports now, cut to essentially black. And then the future researcher just pulls up the newspaper article showing Armando dead on the ground. And she seems upset by that. She seems like, oh no, this is not how I would have hoped that this all got wrapped up. And I guess at that point, we see her do a little bit more research, but it turns out that a big reason as to why she was getting so deeply involved with this and like doing this extra research on Armando is because she is personal friends to some extent with the son of Armando from the beginning.
No,
is she not? That's what I picked up.
That's the first time she's met him at the end. They're not personal friends.
Is it?
She sought him out to because he's Armando's son. She didn't know him before that.
I must have misread some line in there because I was picking up that they knew each other.
No, it's a first time meeting. She talks to the other researcher about how she finds comfort in Armando's voice. She talks about relating to the story a little bit because she has family that came from the same area and stuff like that. I was actually a little bit worried they were going to do like, oh, she's the granddaughter of this character that we met in the story. I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm like, no, just someone else in the city. It's fine.
I was expecting the twist being that she was Fernando's daughter. Like she's actually researching her grandfather, but certain lines made that very quickly like, no, that can't be the case.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that. It'd been a bit more hokey to do that. Yeah. But she goes to this city where most of the story took place, and she finds Fernando, who is now a doctor who works at the blood clinic. She donates blood, but she's clearly like, you know, messaged ahead and like arranged to see him. So we get this extended sequence, and it's the same actor, of course, playing Fernando as Armando. And basically, she's asking these questions about, oh, do you know much about your grandmother, who your father was looking for? And he's like, nah, not really. I've got a name. Like, that's it. And she starts talking about his father. And the overall sentiment here that gets quite sad is that he kind of says, like I don't really know much about my father. Like I've been told by my grandparents who raised me that, you know, I was ready. I had my bags packed. I was going to go with him that day, and he never showed up. But I don't really remember that. Like, I've just kind of like implanted memories because I've heard that told to me so many times. The truth is that you probably know my father better than I do because you've been doing all this research and you've heard all these recordings. Like, I really don't know him. And, you know, she's like, hey, I wasn't supposed to do this, but I made a copy of all the audio to get, you know, so you could have it if you want to listen to it. So, you know.
It also feels like, obviously, he just had the death of his mother before that as a child. So, death of his father, and now he's in the handlings of his grandparents. I feel like because all of the news reports and stuff like that were saying that he was corrupt and he was all this stuff as the cover up for whatever actually happened, I feel like the grandparents were specifically keeping him away from looking into it. Like, it was something where they were like, you know, they didn't give the full story to him of what actually happened. And they also were keeping away from the newspapers or whatever. They were just like, oh, you know, something happened to your father. Don't worry about it.
He got pneumonia.
Yep. Oh, that darn pneumonia.
Yeah, he's on a farm.
He got kicked in the face by a hairy leg. It happens.
Yeah, and interestingly, he does bring up Jaws, Fernando. He brings up, hey, remember Jaws? And she's like, yeah, sure, I know Jaws. And he's like, yeah, I was scared of that. But I was scared of the poster and I had nightmares about the shark every night. But then my grandfather eventually, out the blue, actually let me see it. And like my nightmares stopped. And it's interesting going back, because before that point, I was like, all throughout the movie, I'm like, okay, I think the sharks, represent like the villain, for example, who he literally came to his research center and like spilled the blood in the water and saw that he could get something out of it and like just completely tore it to shreds. And it comes up throughout the movie and people are talking about the shark leg thing and they're talking about Jaws throughout the whole thing. At one point, the kid's watching a shark cartoon, in the middle of the movie.
I think it's Popeye, yeah.
Yeah, but at the end, so he brings this up and he's like, oh yeah, I stopped being scared once I saw it. Like, it's like, it was a scary idea until I confronted it. And I think that was almost maybe getting in a little bit to his, like, he's almost been scared to even, like, look into his father, because what if his father, because maybe from his perspective, he didn't know if his father was some sort of traitor, someone who actually did bad things and was killed for relatively good reasons. And I say relatively with a lot of emphasis there. But this idea that maybe he can confront that now if he actually listens to these recordings, or something to that effect. That was kind of how I was reading some of what he was saying at the end.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the entire bit at the end of not at the end of knowing that Elza set up this sort of freedom fighter resistance thing against the military dictatorship, having the father say like, the reason we were on the run is because of what he did to his mother, essentially. I feel like that is explicitly something where he's going to be viewing his father in a much more positive light than he would have even had before, because even if it wasn't a negative, even if he was fearing the idea of his father being corrupt or anything like that, he just talks about him with such a distance of just this no, I didn't really like, it's not something I think about. It's not something that is even like on my radar. And so to put it back into a perspective of not only back in the limelight, but positivity is definitely a change for the better.
Yeah, because he even does that thing where he, as a kid, he draws like a shark with his family all standing on the shark. So clearly he really cared about his dad at one point in his life, but obviously just in the coping mechanism and whatever he was told or not told after his dad died has just built this kind of like barrier to even the idea of thinking about him. And that's kind of what we're seeing here at the end. And it's just, it's almost like they're still victims of what happened in the country 40 years ago, even in present day. Like, people are still feeling the knock-on effects of what everyone was going through back then. I think timeline-wise, if I was to guess, I mean, if it's not exactly just present day, it's probably about 10 years ago, just based on the age of, like, Fernando when he was a kid and, where he is as an adult, age-wise.
Yeah, I suppose that would make sense, because, I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about 50 years passing, so he would need to be at least, like, 57, 58.
Well, he's about 6 or 7 in the movie, right? So in the main part of the story. So let's say he's born in 1950, or sorry, 70, just to
make math easier.
Make it easier. He'd be 50 in 2020. So if I'm thinking, because they say that at one point his dad was 43 when he died, so let's say he's about that age now. I was thinking like 2015-ish.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. I'm sure that you could like look at the iPhone and figure out what model it is.
Oh, sure. I mean, maybe it may just be 2025. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It may not matter. It's just like
he does have more gray hair as a blood doctor than his father did. So maybe he is slightly older.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It doesn't really matter much. It was just more thought experiment than anything else.
No, I mean, I appreciate what, as you were saying, the idea of it feels like that final talk that he's having of, we have to confront it. We have to, like, otherwise it's just this thing that is a fear in our minds of it is something that needs to be seen and confronted directly. It feels like that's what the movie is doing. It feels like that's the sort of thing where it's like, look, we went through this. We did this whole military dictatorship, and it's something that needs to be confronted rather than just brushed under and said like, oh, and who knows, maybe this is something that is like taught in schools. Maybe this is something that they do talk about and say, here's what happened. We're not going to shy away from it so that it doesn't happen again. But living in America, I can tell you, like, No, you mostly just ignore that stuff because it's not something you want to talk about in the difficult moments.
Yeah, if I was to guess, I would say it's something they shy away from talking about because it's something that, like, they don't want to talk about that in school because it's just a bunch of negative stuff that, like, makes us all feel bad about our country. So maybe that's kind of what they're getting at here, is this idea of having to actually confront what actually was going on, and viewing that through the lens of a child who doesn't even know who their parent was because he's kept them at a distance for one reason or the other. So,
I mean, not even viewing it through that lens, viewing it through the lens of a historian presenting it to that person. Like, it's all these levels of removal, but it is something that we get to see firsthand because of what was set up here.
And even the detail at the end that the clinic that they're in used to be the cinema that he saw Jaws in. It's like, oh, this was literally covered up. And don't get me wrong, clinics are good. And the fact that he became someone whose job it is to help people is a nice kind of like spiritual, like, step in the right direction, I suppose. But it's, still, it was covered up. Not that the cinema itself obviously was a corrupt thing inherently, but you know what I mean?
There were people performing oral sex as they were watching The Omen. It's a den of sin.
That's a weird one to be like, oh, that's there's an evil child on the screen, trying to kill his mother. Go on then. I'm in the mood, honey.
Oh God. And I love whenever that happens. He, like, Marcelo leans over and is just like, Armando leans over to his father-in-law, just like, hey, and he's like, I know. It's during every showing. There's always one.
What gets me, though, is that they're kind of relatively close to the people who are all around them, and I'm like, like, I get, you still have to back away from people if you're going to be doing something suspicious. Just a thought.
This is exactly where the hairy leg comes in. Takes care of business.
Very good, very good. Dear. I mean, he was enjoying the movie, seemingly. I don't know if I could focus on the movie personally, but, that's me.
No, probably not.
If it's a bad movie, maybe it's an alternative way to pass the time, sure, but
yeah, why not? I mean, that's half the reason that tickets are bought to bad movies.
Yeah. I just make you go and see them for content reasons, but
oh no, not at all.
Yeah, that's you better not be getting oral sex when you're watching movies for X reels, David. I'll be very upset to find out if that's true.
No. Tune into Patreon to find out.
Dear. It's you know what? It's The Secret Agent is obviously a good movie. It is a well-made, well-thought-out movie that maybe I just didn't completely connect to.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like the first part of the movie was so much like atmosphere and so much of saying like, hey, you get it. And I had to shake my head and say no. And it wasn't until I felt like the plot had fully kicked in that I was really able to engage with it on the level that it was trying to get me there.
Yeah. It does feel like, some of those side characters and their introductions maybe could have been trimmed down. Like, for all we get of, like, the two assassins, for example, like, how much of an importance did they actually have? Now, maybe it's very possible here there's an extra bit of subtext with, like, what they represent in the grand scheme of things that I don't get because I don't know the history, right? It's entirely possible. I'm acknowledging that. But at least from my perspective, it feels like, oh, those are the two characters you could have cut down their time by half easily and not lost anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the Wikipedia page just to make sure, we covered all the plot, stuff like that. And towards the very end, when it says the blood scene of the blood bank, when they're talking about Armando's mother, her name, India, links to the article for indigenous people of Brazil, like native Brazilians. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch of subtext underneath there as to like how his mother got erased because she was a native Brazilian rather than someone who moved in or colonized or whatever.
Yeah. And there was talk as well, I think, during that scene of like how she was like 14 when she got pregnant with Armando, and the dad was like 17 and all sorts. There's also like a sequence early on in the movie when he, well, it's not that early, but it's when he goes to work at the records office, and there's kind of this background plot of like a woman coming in to give a deposition because she's a rich woman whose servant, the servant's kid died when the kid was left alone because the rich woman told the servant to go and get something at the store or whatever. And now this woman's like and given a deposition and all that, and the mother shows up angry, like demanding to speak to her, and so it feels like the police are protecting the rich woman, and like trying to give her every possible out from this situation. And you can see how that sort of mirrors maybe some of the past here with Armando's mother and her disappearance, and how that's not a concern for anyone to keep track of. Yeah, absolutely. So no, it's a solidly well done, smart movie, but just not one that maybe completely clicks, I think, with either of us seemingly. No, but I don't think that that's a fault of the movie. I think that's just it's a foreign film that's hitting on something very specific to its country of origin, and sometimes that is universal enough that it's like, you brought up Seven Samurai, the idea of like the lower class versus upper class and all that sort of stuff, and changing times like that. I think there are universal languages that can come across through that, but this feels like it's hitting on such a specific thing that while we can recognize it, it's hard to empathize completely with it. Well, to me, I think you could have made it more universal. I think you could you could have hit on these same themes, but at the same time, that's not to say that would have been the right choice per se. It's a tough thing to gauge because ultimately, is it something right to critique that it didn't make itself more accessible to people who didn't know the history? The answer is probably not, but ultimately, I respect when a movie can do that, though. I respect when a movie, without me having to know anything about where it's from, can make me get it, completely. And it's so engrossing as a result. And arguably, this comes off as maybe a little dry to an outsider because it does feel like there's historical textbook knowledge that I just don't have. That's hampering things a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. The hairy leg, I feel like, is that in miniature. I feel like it did a great job of making it entertaining for the movie, and I feel like we got almost enough context to say this is representative of all censorship and not just this one event that they're saying happened in the park. But it still feels just a little bit lacking, where they don't quite connect all the dots up. Yeah. There's a couple other scenes that I just want to mention before we get to Rain, because I like them individually for one reason or the other. One is the scene where we get to see all the characters that he's living with in that same house again. And it's just after they've read the paper. But he kind of comes in and he's at this kind of low point, and knowing there's an assassin after him, where he just kind of says to them, my name's Armando. You can call me, Marcel if you want. And they all just kind of be like, oh, should we be giving our real names? And one of them kind of wants to, and they kind of but it's almost just this really human moment, I thought, of yeah, we're all having to hide our names because we know that if one of us gets hunted down, they might come to the others for intel, and we're covering our tracks. But it's so dehumanizing to have to act this way around each other when we clearly are all in the same boat that no, that I think the older lady even almost specifically spells it out, where it's look, you all are in the same boat, and humans have this natural urge to come together over these things, but you are forced to put this wall up between you where you don't know who you can trust, so you have to keep these barriers of fake names and not saying too much about your history or where you're going or anything like that. And it's a solid moment to see the few of them come through and just be like, yeah, no, I also have a death threat against me, or this is where we're going when we get out of here. They just reveal these tiny things about themselves. Yeah, again, not shying away from things. It's almost like a self-imposed version of for not knowing about your parent. It's I'm going to erase myself from myself as I'm living because I have to, kind of thing. Well, I mean, I feel like that's the biggest thing about a military dictatorship is the idea of living in fear, even when it's not directly on you. There's this, just like you said, this tension in the air is this fear of you never know what's going to be the thing that ruins everything. Yep. The other thing I want to is just to go back to the when he's telling the story about the dinner sequence when his wife was there, is I just wanted to compliment just two things about this. One, how well, given that she only has one real scene, she comes across as a character. Like, she's so well defined by this one sequence. We've heard about her a bunch. You know, her father-in-law's her father's talked about her. The son's talked about his mum that's died. You know, he's obviously been upset, Armando as well, about his wife that's gone. You know, we've had all this, alluding to her throughout the movie, and then we finally get to see her. And I think it's really fitting that, one, she comes across like such a strong character in this one scene, and that maybe led to her demise. But two, we're getting who she is in one scene from the perspective of someone telling a story about her, because otherwise she'll be lost to time. And it's from, and it's notable as well that one of the things that she says about her dad, like the dad hears this when he's telling the story, and he's like, wait, did she really say that about me? And he's like, yeah, she did. And it fits so well into the themes of the stories that, like, the only time we get to see her is through the perspective of someone telling the story of what she did later on after the fact. So there's really well done thematic stuff there. So
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely a thankless role for the sake of the actress, but from the viewpoint of the whole movie, you feel like you know that character so much deeper.
Yeah, I mean, obviously sometimes when actors only get like one or two scenes, like, yeah, but you can steal the whole movie.
Right.
It's usually just kind of lip service, but I feel like in this case, I'm not saying she stole the whole movie, but I'm like, no, you're only in one scene, but your character's actually so important for the entire thing that, like, it's kind of a big deal, even though it only feels like you're getting, like, 2 minutes of screen time. So yeah.
And even within that scene, like, she's in it for about 10 seconds, and then she's like, I have to go to the bathroom. She gets up and, like, walks away from the main focus of the scene and only comes back to deliver her scathing monologue. But
she nails it. She nails the monologue. Yeah. So credit to her. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was a really good honestly, it may have been my second pick for scene of the movie, was seeing her kind of unleash on the asshole, and even though if that was kind of the it's like, hey, you spoke against the powers that be, in this case it's that rich asshole, and that led to you being erased, maybe, potentially. So anyway, I think that leads us to deciding our ratings for the movie. So David, what are you giving it?
I feel like with all of the talent behind it and how much I do like the themings, like, even if this movie didn't land specifically for me, I can't objectively give it, like, even a middling score. I feel like it's got to be able to get up to at least a 7.5. The real debate is if I get it up to the 8. I'm going to say I'll give it the 8. I think it is up to that level. I think that it's very tight. It's very close. But I think that if I'm looking at other things that I gave an 8 this season, this one is absolutely on that level at the bare minimum. So I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted because I think on a personal level, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, either way, it's at least getting to the 7. Right? It's good, right? It's objectively good, right? There's no way it goes below a 7. I think part of me's thinking now maybe it is like a 7.5 for me, right, in terms of just like how much I got out of it, even though I appreciate a lot of it and I think there's a lot of craft here. But at the same time, I'm thinking about like converting that to stars for Letterboxd, and I'm like, do I really want to like give it 3.5 stars? It feels a little bit less than what it deserves in some ways, but at the same time, I don't think I like it, like, personally as much as I do most things that I'd give an 8 out of 10 to. So I think I'm going to have to be really, really weird here and just sort of say, no, I'm going to go 7.5. Okay. I think for me to cross that barrier to 8, I have to feel a bit more personally attached and want to watch it again. And the simple fact is that 2 hours and 40 minutes, the chances of me ever watching this again are pretty slim. So
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. It'd have to be more of a personal home run where I'm like, bawling my eyes out and like really being touched on a deep spiritual level by the end for that to happen.
Pete, when was the last time you bawled your eyes out to a movie?
Okay, I don't bawl my eyes out, but I shed the single manly tear, okay?
Okay, gotcha.
Right?
I imagine everything that would have the emotion for you to be able to bawl your eyes out to, and you just being like, whatever, it was fine, I guess.
I tend, do you know what's funny is I don't tend to when I do get a bit teary at a movie, it's not usually something sad. It's usually like a hopeful moment that gets me more than anything, because I find that more like people are sad and depressed all the time. It's easy to be sad. You show me something that's worth living for, I may actually shed a tear. So
no, I get it. Like, we laugh, but I get it.
Yeah, honestly, it's just what moves me. So anyway, there you go. That's the secret agent. I suppose we have to say if it makes the cut or not, which I think it makes the cut.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably not the most enthusiastic making the cut ever, just because we do have some kind of like caveats, but it's obviously good enough to hit that threshold.
Oh, yeah. No, look, when the next category beneath it is cutting it close, it's no contest. It's absolutely making a cut, because it's nowhere near cutting it close.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is we need a new category in between.
Probably.
A cut between.
But look, I ran out of puns. I ran out of puns for cut when I was making these. So
yes.
Audience, what would you call something that's pretty good, but not quite in the same category as really good?
I'm just joking. It's funny though, when David proposed the cut scale, if you will, which is, cut above, makes the cut, cutting it close, cut your losses. I immediately said, no, there's one below that where it cuts. Right?
Yeah.
I think we settled on it cuts deep, but I think the first joke I said was a lot darker than that.
Yeah.
So there's room for more cut puns for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find them.
Anyway, so that's that. So yeah, next episode is the finale of 2025 season. And it is the one that I have arguably been looking forward to the most, because it's a film by Chan-wook Park, and that is no other choice. I am very much excited to check this movie out next week. Been looking forward to it all season long. So
all right,
that's what's coming next time on the show. Obviously check out Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi podcast, which is also me and David going through stuff. We've recently done some big things like Project Hail Mary, but also some weird obscure 90s movies like Mind Warp, and next week we've got War Machine, which is a recent Netflix movie. So yeah, give that a look-see, I guess. Maybe you'll find some...
Nothing draws people in like the words Netflix movie.
So yeah, check out that. But of course, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Get access to the bonus ratings rundown segments we do for each episode of both this and Ace, as well as a monthly bonus show we do called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. So check out all that. Thanks to everyone who already does support us. It really does make everything possible. So yep, that is everything. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.